In this video, I'll show you July 15, 2021. In this encounter, Officer Devontae Johnson of the Moorefield Police Department in West Virginia initiated a traffic stop on Hardy County Circuit Judge C. Carter Williams for operating his vehicle with a cell phone in his hand. By the time Officer Johnson got to Judge Williams' car, the judge was already infuriated, believing that he wasn't actually violating the law and that he was just holding his phone as opposed to actually using it.
The next time I see any of you on the phone, I'm stopping right there and call the state police. Any of you.
Okay.
This is how I had my phone. I reached down and got it under my seat. I pulled it up here and I was driving like this. I was not talking on it. You can look. You can look when you pull me over. See whether I was on my phone.
Why are you being like this?
I'm being it because I've seen this crap enough. And I'm tired of it.
Here you go. Here's your license, registration, proof of insurance.
Give it to me. Let me have my license now.
Also, you need to go get your license up to date because they're expired, okay?
Judge Williams also called Moorefield's former police chief and then Lieutenant Burrows again before showing up at the home of Moorefield Mayor Carol Zuber around 10 p.m. to complain to her about the traffic stop. When we left off on our coverage, the West Virginia Judicial Investigation Commission filed a so-called extraordinary complaint against Judge Williams. The allegation stemmed from his conduct during the traffic stop and his subsequent behavior, as well as several other traffic stop incidents. Complaint also included allegations that Judge Williams engaged in a pattern of public office for private gain and violating state traffic laws, as the investigation revealed several other instances where Judge Williams potentially used his title to avoid tickets for running a stop sign, driving with an expired registration, and on 2 occasions, driving without a seatbelt. An additional complaint was also filed against Judge Williams for violations of the Code of Judicial Conduct based on a July 21, 2020 incident where Judge Williams allegedly walked out of Walmart without paying for the items in his cart. On September 30, 2021, the Supreme Court determined that there was probable cause to believe that Judge Williams had violated the Code of Judicial Conduct and remanded the matter to the Judicial Investigation Commission, which filed an 11-count formal statement of charges on October 25. Judge Williams was scheduled to go before the Judicial Hearing Board on February 23, 2022. But the Commission filed an additional formal state of charges against Judge Williams on February 14th, and his guess-who hearing was postponed. The new charges stemmed from yet another incident, where Judge Williams walked out of Walmart without paying for his merchandise on August 18, 2021. Although Walmart sources reported that Judge Williams appeared to be distracted both times that he allegedly left without paying for his items, the judge failed to report these incidents. These investigations were still ongoing when we covered this interaction, but in May of 2023, Judge Williams was officially sanctioned by the state Supreme Court and he was suspended for 6 months and fined $5,000. According to Supreme Court Chief Justice Beth Walker, Judge Williams' call to the officer supervisor during the traffic stop, quote, can only reasonably be interpreted as coercive, and the calls made thereafter were a blatant invocation of his office. A judicial disciplinary investigation also found that Judge Williams had been pulled over 3 other times in 2020 and 2021 without being ticketed. In October of 2023, the Judicial Hearing Board found that Judge Williams violated 6 judicial rules related to professional and public conduct, compliance with the law, and using his office for personal gain, which resulted in the punishment mentioned before. Needless to say, this feels like a slap on the wrist for a judge that has demonstrated poor character on multiple occasions and even technically breaking the law twice. If any normal person were to walk out of Walmart without paying for their items, then they would be prosecuted without question, especially if they did it more than once.
Officer Dukes tried to claim that Mr. Gaillard was armed with a metal stick and refused to obey his commands to get on the ground. After the officers discovered that Mr. Gaillard and Mr. Julian were not threats,
they were released without charges. At one point, Mr. Julian asks Officer Dukes if he has a business card, and the officer tells Mr. Julian that they are not issued business cards. However, he is quickly corrected by Sergeant Polidor, who provided Mr. Julian with the information he requested. "Can I get a card for you? I don't have one now. We don't have one. They don't give us cards." "Okay, what's your batch number? 1059? Let me see if I can get my phone. Hold on. We have cards." 2 days after the incident, Officer Dukes was fired from the Orangeburg Department of Public Safety for violating the department's use of force policies. And on August 25, 2021, former Officer Dukes was charged with first-degree assault and battery, which could carry a sentence of up to 10 years in prison. When we left off on our coverage of the interaction, Mr. Galliard had not yet taken any legal action against Officer Dukes or the department. Since then, Mr. Galliard went on to file a lawsuit against the city of Orangeburg, which settled for $650,000 in November of 2021, just 4 months after the incident occurred. Now, as for Mr. Dukes' criminal charges, they're still pending as of the writing of this update, which is over 3 years after the incident. This goes to show that sometimes justice can move relatively swiftly in some areas and frustratingly slow in others. It is rare that a lawsuit involving excessive force or police misconduct can be resolved so quickly, but it is also worth noting that Mr. Dukes has. Yet, to face any kind of actual punishment for assaulting Mr. Galliard beyond being fired from his job, it will be interesting to see how his criminal charges play out, and once again, I'll try to keep you updated as much as I can. The next interaction happened on the evening of January 2nd, 2021 in the small city of Battle Creek, Michigan. Local resident LaRon Marshall was going door-to-door at the Wintry Townhomes complex, collecting signatures in an effort to form a tenants association to combat crime and mistreatment within his community. Marshall had already collected nearly 100 signatures before he knocked on the door of Kimberly Tudsky and asked her if she would like to participate in the formation of the association. While engaging in small talk with Miss Tudsky, Mr. Marshall was
approached by Deputy Hamilton and another unidentified deputy from the Calhoun County Sheriff's Office. The deputies accused Mr. Marshall of soliciting, and Mr. Marshall informed the deputies that he was collecting signatures and did not request any money from anyone. As we discussed in the episode, there was nothing illegal about what Mr. Marshall was doing. In fact, Mr. Marshall's conduct is vehemently protected by the Constitution. So the deputies turned their attention to ascertaining Mr. Marshall's identity.
Okay, where's your ID at?
See, they ask all the questions, but they don't want to answer no questions.
If you fail to identify yourself, you're going to go to jail.
But he's not committed a crime and he's not doing anything wrong. We have the right. We have the right to petition in this country.
Back, you're under arrest.
No, I'm not.
Turn around and put your hands
I got
behind
the
your
right to
back. You're under
petition.
arrest.
What am I going to arrest for?
Can I have your badge number, sir?
Hindering and opposing. Turn around and put your hands
Hindering
behind your
what?
back.
There's no investigation
Nobody's
because there's
stalking
been
you.
no crime
Nobody's
committed.
stalking you.
Okay, well, don't play with my
live
rights.
in
I
front
need
of
your
you.
badge
Turn
number.
around and put your hands behind your back.
I'm
For the
around. I live in
fourth
front
time,
of
you
you.
are under arrest.
I live in the front up there. I just told you that.
Deputy
Turn around
Hamilton, and
No.
who are
put your hands
you?
behind your
I'm
back.
Laron.
The deputies eventually placed Mr. Marshall in handcuffs for refusing to identify
himself and escort him to their patrol car, where an unidentified deputy violently shoved Mr. Marshall into the vehicle. Mr. Marshall was arrested and was charged with felony resisting and obstructing an officer, but the charges against him were dropped 3 days later, and the Calhoun County Undersheriff issued an apology in person. When we left off on our coverage, Mr. Marshall's attorney stated that they were still in the investigative stages and were deciding whether or not to pursue further legal action. Well, ironically enough, 1 day after we post. At our coverage of this interaction, the Calhoun County Sheriff's Office announced that one of the deputies involved in the encounter had been terminated, but they did not identify which deputy it was. We became aware of this interaction just days after it occurred, and we were able to release an episode covering it within a couple of weeks of it taking place, which is rare considering the time that it generally takes to research the legal topics involved in each episode. It is very uncommon for an update to occur the day after we post our coverage of an interaction, but the fact that we were able to get this episode released so quickly is probably why this happened. This just goes to show that taking some time to see how an interaction might play out in the short term can be beneficial, and this is one of the reasons that we typically do not cover interactions until some time has passed. Well, in January of 2023, Mr. Marshall filed a lawsuit against the two deputies involved in the interaction, which is still in its preliminary stages. I'll try to keep you up to date on its progress in future update episodes. The next encounter took place on November 29, 2022. In Trinidad, Colorado, where local resident Nathaniel Espinosa was pulled over by Deputy Mikhail Knoll of the Los Animas County Sheriff's Office for an alleged traffic violation. Nathaniel was being followed by his father, Kenneth Espinosa, when he was pulled over. Kenneth circled the block before parking approximately 75 feet behind Deputy Knoll's patrol vehicle to wait for his son. As Kenneth waited and observed the traffic stop from this distance, Lieutenant Henry Trujillo arrived to assist in the traffic stop and made contact with him. Lieutenant Trujillo orders Kenneth to leave the traffic stop and threatens to charge
him if he does not comply, although he does not say what crime he would be charged with, and Kenneth refuses to leave. Well, after a short verbal altercation, Lieutenant Trujillo returns to his patrol car while another officer issues 2 clear commands for Kenneth to leave. But as Kenneth tries to drive away, the officers immediately change their mind and begin ordering him to stay.
You need to go.
No, I don't. I'm waiting on my son. He's my ride back to Wilson.
Leave. Leave.
That's the part.
Stay. Hey, stop the car. Get the car. Get out the car.
What are you gonna do?
SD4, give me the radio.
The officers eventually get Kenneth out of his truck after tasing him and attempting to tase him multiple times. After Kenneth's arrest, Lieutenant Trujillo allegedly deactivated his body camera and did not reactivate it for the remainder of the encounter. According to Kenneth's lawsuit, an ambulance arrived on the scene to take him to the hospital, but Lieutenant Trujillo chose instead to personally transport Kenneth to the Los Animas County.
Warden Dirk Paulson of the Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks was detained by tribal police officers from the Fort Belknap law enforcement as he drove down a county road located in the southeast corner of Blaine County, Montana. The Fort Belknap officers insisted that the warden was trespassing on tribal land and threatened to impound his vehicle and cite him for criminal trespass. Other officers from nearby departments arrived to negotiate with the Fort Belknap officers, and after detaining the warden for approximately 5 hours, they twice eventually released him without incident. But this interaction did not end there. On February 19, 2016, Regional Supervisor Mark Sullivan of the Montana Department of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks issued a letter to Warden Paulson ordering him to avoid conducting, now quoting any business on tribally owned lands, the reservation, and submarginal lands nearby. The letter clarified that the restrictions were not punitive, but were put in place out of concerns for Warden Paulson's safety after the incident. Blaine County Sheriff Glenn Houston. Justice requested the Division of Criminal Investigation to conduct an investigation regarding whether criminal charges should be filed, and in a report submitted back on September 29, 2014, Agent Bruce McDermott concluded that the tribal officers could be charged with several misdemeanor crimes as well as felony intimidation. However, an article published in the Billings Gazette on March 31, 2016, states that Blaine County Attorney Kelsey Harwood was asked not to prosecute in conversations with the Department of Justice and Fish Wild, Life and Parks, and the Attorney General's Office. Although the article reported that Montana had been negotiating with the Fort Belknap Community Council since 2015 to create a hunting district in the disputed lands that would be managed jointly by Fish, Wildlife, and Parks and tribal game officials, there had been no published updates when.
A police department arrived on the scene. Eventually, Detective Chris Rivera arrived, and he ordered Mr. Garces to get out of his crime scene, prompting a tense verbal exchange.
Did you see anybody running, anybody leaving the area, anything?
Not a thing. Relieve him? Someone relieves him, get a mask. Not a thing.
Get this guy out of here. Sir.
He's a witness.
What the?
Relax, okay?
Hey,
we appreciate it.
Huh?
So I got a crime scene, sir. I'm a detective.
Yeah, and I'm here helping him, so step the off.
Out of my
Okay? If you're a good detective, you wouldn't be yelling at me right now. You'd be taking care of your job.
The officers escort Mr. Garces off of the scene, and he continues voicing his opinion of the detective's conduct. After Mr. Garces shouted at Detective Rivera from outside the parking lot, the detective left the scene and approached Mr. Garces.
No, you need to understand that document. Really, the paint compliance, that's what we need to do? Because you don't like being taught.
What's his name?
The officers then proceeded to handcuff Mr. Garces and place him in the back of their patrol car. The officers held Mr. Garces in the back of the patrol car for about 15 minutes, after which Detective Rivera uncuffed Mr. Garces and told him that he was free to leave. Sometime later, Mr. Garces requested emergency medical services, and a police officer
called an ambulance for him. Mr. Garces was treated at Community Memorial Hospital in Ventura, California, and reportedly suffered a dislocated shoulder and torn labrum that had to be surgically repaired. No charges were filed against Mr. Garces. On August 19, 2021, Mr. Garces filed a federal lawsuit against Detective Rivera and the city of Santa Paula, alleging civil rights violations, including a federal claim for excessive force and several state law claims. On March 24, 2023, U.S. District Judge Fernando Rocha ruled that Detective Rivera had qualified immunity and therefore could not be held personally liable for the federal excessive force claim because the use of a so-called C-clamp hold had not been clearly established as a violation of the Fourth Amendment. When we left off on our coverage, the federal claim was still pending against the city, and Mr. Garces still had other legal avenues that he could explore for pursuing justice. Well, in June of 2023, it was announced that a settlement had been reached between Mr. Garces and the city of Santa Paula for an undisclosed amendment, and that both parties had agreed to sign non-disclosure agreements as part of the settlement. Following the encounter, Detective Rivera left the Santa Paula Police Department and joined the nearby Baldwin Park Police Department. According to the city of Santa Paula, Detective Rivera left, quote, in good standing. Once again, even though the victim of police misconduct was compensated, the perpetrator of the misconduct faced no real punishment. This is a major part of the problems affecting the overall structure of policing. Our society. Although it is good when victims of police misconduct receive monetary compensation, it often comes by way of a settlement that allows the perpetrator of the misconduct to continue working in law enforcement. That's all the updates that we have for you in this episode. But, as mentioned before, there will be more update episodes to come in the future. Remember to let us know if you enjoyed this type of episode. Thank you very much for watching the video. Subscribe our channel for next video.